Having a train around the tree is a time-honored tradition at holiday time. Some use O-scale Lionel trains that have been passed down from parents to children. We see a lot of HO-scale trains for sale everywhere this time of year. Some of these train layouts become elaborate dioramas with highly detailed terrain. I've been setting up Lego trains under our Christmas tree for years now, and I've always been curious to see if I could take the clarified design language of Lego and bring it into a traditional layout with realistic geographic features, and see if there wasn't a way for these two worlds to complement one another. So, let's build a Lego train layout we can use under our Christmas tree.
What we basically want is the train to go around and cross over itself, come back underneath, and go under itself. So I kind of want to design a figure eight and then bend that back over itself so it all stays under the tree. So let's start by making a couple loops. Okay, so we're getting the general idea here how we want the train to come around, cross over itself, go back down, around, and under itself. So the next thing we have to do is determine the grade of the track. And I happen to know from experience that these trains really struggle to accomplish anything other than a 2-plate elevation change per track length. And so some time ago, I pre-built all these sections to that metric so that we can take this thing down and even grade change all the way. Once we've measured all that out and find out that this layout works, we're going to want to turn all of this into a permanent base instead of a Lego base. And that'll be terrain accomplished with Dow foam blocking and cardboard and hot glue. I can just place them under here for the moment. So that no. Alright, so that worked out pretty nicely. We've got, takes almost the entire circumference of the track to create these elevation changes, and they pretty much meet right here and here at their highest and lowest point. And they spend their entire transit around the track, either rising in elevation or descending in elevation. I think even though these aren't attached, we can kind of see if the train makes this grade the way that I remembered it. And it looks like we're in business. What we've got to do next is transfer this onto a piece of cardboard, and we'll compare the radius of our Christmas tree, or the diameter of our Christmas tree, to this layout, and we'll transfer each one of these vertical elevations down to a known position, and then we'll build that back up in cardboard or in Dow foam. Alright, I think we had a factory edge on here, and I think it's that side. Kind of want to come in and plot a center point and lay out our Christmas tree, and then bring our track layout back on here. So I want to come in basically 2 feet. Let's add a little bit to that. Let's add 4 inches and come out to 28 inches. And let's do the same thing here. At least find our center point. what I think we're going to do is actually cut out a path of cardboard to match this path of our track. And then we're going to elevate that cardboard strip at each one of those vertical dimensions we transfer down here. So the first thing we need to do is find the layout of this track, and I want to leave us a little buffer. One of the important things we need to document here is each one of these track intersections, because this is where we're going to need to record that vertical change from section to section. So in addition to our outline, we're going to go ahead and make sure that we get where each one of these track pieces meet. So at each one of these track intersections, we want to measure that tolerable grade. And so we'll do that by capturing the measurement from each one of these stanchions. This one's here at 3 11/16. I think there's a 1/4 inch difference between each one of these. So this one should be 3 7/16. All right, we've got a 1/4 inch elevation change here, and we'll need a set to go down in elevation that way and a set to go down in elevation this way. We got about 20 plus more of these to go. Okay, we've got 2 sets here. One marked G for gray, that'll start here. It's going to start here and work its way down. And a set marked B that'll start here and work its way down. And we're going to glue it for now just onto the bottom of our track here. This particular brand of glue, which I think is all temperature at this heat, strangely smells exactly like a military surplus store, which is kind of nice. Reminds me of all the days prop shopping on films in the Tidewater area of Virginia at awesome surplus stores like Grand Junction and Virginia Beach. Now, normally we'd be real concerned about just gluing one edge of something two-dimensional like this, because when you do that, it can rack and it could easily collapse like that. But as these things go around in a circle and we spread that out, as this one would want to collapse, we're working against this one, which is opposed to it. So it'll only take a few more of these to get going here before it'll be strong enough where I'm not worried about it kind of collapsing under its own weight. Okay, we've got this all glued up. We want to add some terrain to this thing, but first I want to tell you, this double ply cardboard that I found in the scrap bin is awesome, and this thing is bulletproof. It's so rigid. I'm like so stoked. It's like, check this out. It's amazing. We found our drop. We've got our middle section here, which I have to find out which way that's meant to go. Here we go. It goes that way. And then this element that dropped into this section here, cut that into a few easy to work with sections. Let's start by just putting a few pieces down as a base here in the center. So got a section of this ready to go.
We're working with this circular layout that brings the train back around and under itself, and it really reminds me of the Tehachapi Loop on the Union Pacific that bridges the Mojave Desert to the San Joaquin Valley. But that precise area of the country has a smoother and more eroded quality than the West that I'm thinking of. I want to have the iconic look of the Oregon Trail, something like you'd see in a John Ford Western.
One thing I already know I want to do is create a space for our track switch here and maybe some more. So let's find an elevation for that. I'll just mark it like so. Transfer it over here. I already see I have a convenient line. Love the broken effect. I've used this pink dowel foam in the past to make granite slabs, like a Pennsylvania bluestone capstone for like a stone wall or something in the film industry. And what we would do would be to score it and then break it and give it that chiseled look, which is also going to be a great mountain rock look. So once we've formed it, even with a saw, and we have this porous effect, probably going to go back and see what I can do to cut something thin and then break it and try and get some more smooth and chiseled effects. So there's going to be quite a bit of work to get this where we want it to go, but let's see how we're doing in terms of having a little spot for our switch to develop. We've cut a few more pieces of foam, a few pieces. We are laminating them up in sections to build our elevation. And we'll show you a couple techniques we've used to do that. We've used contact cement, a spray adhesive. One of the things we'll be doing is filling gaps, which also adheres all of our elements together. And we've got some gap filler we'll spray in to these final gaps here so that our terrain can mesh with the rail bed. We've tidied up a bit, and something occurred to me in the process that we haven't shown you kind of what we're doing in a way. I've been building the entire project from a point of view. Typically, a Christmas tree is going to be displayed in the corner of a room or against a wall. And so, if anything, we might even consider, since we'll get rid of this square board in the end, there's kind of a perspective, the primary perspective. And in it, the trestle with the gorge as a backdrop, the rail switch will be right there. We could have a snowplow parked over here. And so we'll maybe have some Easter eggs on the back side so that if you put it in the middle of the room, it'll look great from every perspective. But as I've been building, I've been considering the fact that there will be a primary perspective, and we've been working from that point of view. Well, next we can laminate the two halves of our mountain here, and the spray adhesive we use will be kind of self-webbing, and so I don't have to worry about overspray. Otherwise I'd probably want to do this outside, but this stuff should kind of be like Spider-Man's web, and it should be pretty controlled in here. I won't end up gluing my eyebrows and my arm hair all together, which is my least favorite thing about spray mount. Let's see. Yeah, good. It's shooting a vertical fan right here. So I can come right in and cut it close to the edge and kind of perfectly contour to that edge with a great amount of control. I love this stuff. All right, so we've got this tacky, and that's right where you want it to be when you're using this stuff. And when both sides are almost dry, but not so dry that they're just, you can run your hand across it, but you don't want any material coming off on your fingertips. You want it to be tacky to the touch, but nothing sticking to you. Okay, got that laminated, and I think the last thing we need to do in terms of adhering everything together is fill up this last gap here. This little guy right here, I've lined up some of the faces so that they're in alignment. Some of the others are maybe demonstrate where unexpected portions have fallen away, but I've got a couple other facets aligned that tell the story of times together before the band broke up. There we go. The solvents in our spray paints are going to etch, if not dissolve, this foam. And that's why we've layered it in the PVA glue. So before we go ahead and melt our entire display, I thought we'd test a small sample. So I've already got PVA glue that's dried on here. And we'll go ahead and shoot this thing and make sure that we don't lose it. Definitely getting reactions here. Reactions we don't want. But one side's behaving completely different from the other. On this side, we've got it etching in more than we'd prefer. And on this side, we've got a stranger reaction of it bubbling up. So it looks like we're going to do this thing by hand, which at least means we can do it all indoors here. So, thanks to our bamboo skewer here. In fact, I wanted to mention, if you're not already collecting every single little handy item that you can, coffee stirrers, popsicle sticks, chopsticks, bamboo skewers, everything you can get your hands on is a helpful shop tool for mixing two-part epoxies, for applying adhesives, and for holding things while you work on them. Realizing we're not going to get away with spray paints, at least not yet, we're going to go ahead and put some latex primer on top of our PVA glue to further protect the foam from anything we may do later. Now I realized I may as well mix a little color into the primer in case that buys us a step. So once again, digging through some of our old materials, I found some colors that I used to use when I was doing scenic painting in film to create old brick. And we do pass after pass of slightly different odd colors in that reddish brick family and brown families. We'd finally come back with even black and white. You can see our old action figures moniker on here from back in the film days. Some of this stuff's so old, it does not, it's smelling pretty ripe. And also these cans literally started coming apart in our hands. So this will be the last ride of some of these old paints, and it'll tint our primer, and that'll allow us maybe to get a base color onto everything, and we'll see where we're at. Okay, so I'm not sure what we've got here. It's kind of a rose-colored taupe, a little bit of brown. All I can say is I feel like I've fallen off my mountain bike somewhere in Utah and hit my head on something this color. So I think we're going to go ahead and get it on there. We can always keep going with new layers of texture, washes, spatters, and colors if we don't like the way this ends up looking. Continuing to blend this whole thing together, we've taken some denatured alcohol, mixed it with our latex house paints. We've done a wash over the entire mountain, taking that oxidized belt and that chalky belt and making it all look like it belongs to the same mountain range. We've gone to storage. We found our trestle. It's a little longer than it needs to be, so we're going to shorten that up to fit this diorama. We've already started on the rail bed with our first layer of ballast in kind of a dark gray. We got to add some black shadows, we got to add some medium and light gray highlights, and hopefully we'll take that like rip-rap looking rock and build up a ballast effect. It'll mostly be covered by our Lego train track, but the Lego train track sitting on the dirt's not quite what we're looking for here, so we're going to create a rail bed. Let's clear this out of the way and get started, show you how we got this first technique down, and how we're going to build up the additional layers. So the additional layers of ballast we're going to want to do, we're going to always want to be able to see all the way through down to this base layer. But the base layer needed to be both opaque, so we never saw the dirt through it, and porous towards the outer edges. The way we accomplished that was finding an old sponge roller I had. We took a pair of tweezers and we kind of interrogated the end of the roller here, making it look like a sea sponge roller. And when we came in, we would go ahead and make sure we massaged out enough paint so that this wasn't going to leave a gloopy and opaque edge. And we came in and we kind of started to build up this irregular edge, and we did it on both sides and then made sure that we had a nice opaque band right through the center of it. Now, that differs from what we'll do in our next layer, where we want every layer to be porous all the way through. So we want the entire bed to have the kind of spotty application here. In contrast to what we did with that sponge, we want to take this stucco roller and come back and just leave dots of additional layers all over the layout. And I think we'll start with black to add what will end up being all our drop shadows of the deepest crevices in our ballast. And then we'll build up lighter layers on top. So I've got some of our darkest color. I'm gonna kind of build almost like you're doing printmaking or stamping. I want a bed of paint that I can try to pick up with my roller here. And that's not enough, but whatever it takes. We've got our little mine shaft opening here. We're going to carve out a real mine, so we want to figure out how to trace this onto the rock wall. We're going to have some kind of track system for it that leaves the thing. We'll probably have a little abandoned mining car dumped off the side. We might show how inhospitable this place really is. I think maybe it'd be cool to have some kind of pulley coming out of the rock, something broken and wonky over top that maybe lifted the heavy ore out of these cars and put it on mule back or something. So we're going to tell our little Bob Ross story up here. Right, and we want to take that back probably at least twice that far. But let's now examine the outer perimeter. Make a second small incision where we can recess the brick. All right, like that. Now it looks like it's holding the rock up. Our next layer of ballast is ready, and so we're going to get this kind of medium gray, a little lighter than our base color, a lot lighter than our darkest shadows, which we did last. This kind of has a great cement color. There's a lot of green in this. And this is kind of like a French gray, which is not too different. Seems like it's in the same warm family of what's called old gray, old dark gray in Lego. Lego changed their gray colors to be, I think, a little bit more contemporary with new dark gray and new light gray. You know, we're going to go ahead and put some paint on what'll be part of our Christmas tree trunk before we bring the track in. That way we won't drip paint on anything. So let's sand that PVC and we'll get some paint on there. All right, I'm going to bring our track back, get some of that laid in here. We're also going to take this standard Lego track and beef it up with a commonly used technique of covering it in tiles. So we've got a handful of reddish brown 1x4 Lego tiles that we can make our railroad ties with. We've also got our trestle, which we've reworked, and it's a track length shorter now. We changed the dimension in a couple ways. It was almost the same height as the top of the rock, which wasn't quite as attractive. And since our minimum height under the bridge was already established, we knew that any train we'd run on it could fit in a slightly smaller trestle. So we lowered the height as well. We had to notch our terrain out here to receive the trestle. You can see right here, the track will come in right in at the bed height. It's time to tie this off and call it done. We of course have to catch up with some of our unfinished areas, but I think in terms of steps, we're gonna seal this off here, and we want to see our tree up here and find out how this thing's finally gonna be effective as a Christmas tree base. So let's do that. Next, we want to break down one of these tea lights, kind of see what it's made of. Its form factor is too big for the mind, but it's probably incredibly insubstantial. My guess is it's just an LED touching a battery. So let's get into this thing. There we go. That's all there is to it. Now, if I want to maintain this on-off switch, looks like I'm going to want to keep some of what's happening here. I can also reinstall the battery There's our fire. So the next thing we'll want to do is get rid of portions of this we don't necessarily need. That'll help us fit it into the cave. I want to use a product we used in the film industry called Joe's Sticky Stuff. And it may just very well be a clear butyl, but it certainly acts like a clear butyl. And we can use a little bit of that in case we decide we want to put this on the ceiling of the mine where it's even harder to see. So let's put some of this sticky stuff on here. And then it's hard to reach back into the cave, so I'm going to use this arthroscopic surgical instrument. Let's turn it on. Okay, here we go. Now, let's add our rails coming out of the mine. Get a nice firelight glare coming off of those metal rails. Let's board this abandoned mine up. Perfect.
Inspired by the motifs of both trains and toys under the tree, I'm excited by the interplay here of the bold and emblematic Lego elements when combined with this more detailed resemblance of Western terrain. Well, we want to know what you're doing with Lego or trains this holiday, and you can share that with us by tagging us on Instagram at Home and Design. We'll keep our eye out for that, and you have a great holiday season of making and a happy new year.